everyone, welcome back to Immediate Movie Reactions. I am here after watching The Bride. This is a Maggie Gylenhall film directed, and it stars Jessie Buckley and Christian Bale. Annette Bening is in this film. There are a bunch of people in this film that aren't exactly cameos, but sort of, for me at least, surprise appearances. And I will say this. I cannot go too much into the actual plot of this movie because, number one, it'll give too much away. Number two, it's kind of fucking nonsense in a lot of senses, a lot of ways. I think Jessie Buckley is absolutely stunning and amazing. I thought she was the best part of Men. She was the only good part of Men. That was one of the worst movies that I have ever seen. She loves a movie where there's a good fall, right? A good violent fall. And that's kind of what happens in this. So Jessie Buckley, and just cursory look at this. Jessie Buckley is a young woman who is involved with some mobsters and runs her mouth off. And I only say that because that's what they say in the movie. And gets killed. And we also have Frankenstein, and they're very clear that it's Frankenstein, not Frankenstein or anything like that, is in Chicago at the time for whatever reason, and he needs a bride. He's there because Annette Bening is a doctor, and she knows how to bring people back because it is now, 150 years that Frankenstein has been alive, and he needs a bride because he's dying of loneliness and yada, yada, yada. And so they find this young woman and they bring her back, and how they do it is sort of, a mystery, but like there's science involved. So it works. And then it's basically Jessie Buckley as the bride. And there's a part in the trailer where he says, "Oh, the bride of Frankenstein." She says, "No, just the bride." That does not happen in this movie. That has been either recut or edited or whatever. That does not happen in this movie. But anyway. It's them trying to discover themselves, but then also being on the run because they're monsters. And it goes into this classic, basically monster movie trope of the mob being after them. At one point, people literally carrying torches, even though it's like 1930s New York and Chicago and whatever. And I would say that there was a point in this movie very early on, actually up until about halfway through, where I'm thinking, I love this movie. I love it so much. I'm going to see it again. I need to see this again. It is a perfect 10 movie. It is odd. It is weird. It is artistic. And then I'm thinking, but you know what? There's too much Rob Zombie in this film, which, as much of a fan as I am of his work, he puts out some real shit, like some real garbage. And too much of that gets into this movie, unfortunately. There's actually a scene in this movie where you kind of watch part of The Bride of Frankenstein. At first, I thought it was White Zombie, but no, I believe it is now The Bride of Frankenstein, which makes sense because this is where the movie starts to fall apart for me. You basically figure out that most of this movie is just a retelling of other movies. We have Young Frankenstein. We have The Bride of Frankenstein. We have Passengers. We have Promising Young Woman. And of course, we have Shape of Water, which is ironic because I think this movie is way better than Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, but by the end, maybe not by a lot. There is some real brutality in this film. Some stuff really jumps out. I think Christian Bale is amazing as Frankenstein, and they call him Frank because it does unfortunately get silly. I think they could have developed the bride a little bit more as a character rather than her just kind of following along and she keeps saying, "I prefer not to," which is great. This movie also brings in the Joker because she creates this whole movement. I don't know. That's the problem, is that by the end of this film, it's kind of fallen under the weight of its own pretense. And as much as I still enjoyed it, as much as I think some of it is still absolutely beautiful, and Annette Bening is stunning and striking, and she's amazing. Jessie Buckley does things in this where Mary Shelley exists, but she doesn't exist, and her work of fiction exists, which, by the way, I'm sorry, at the very beginning when there's a crawl that says she wrote Frankenstein on a dare, that's kind of misleading. It was not on a dare. It was a challenge, but not necessarily a dare. But anyway, that's beside the point. There is so much good in this movie. unfortunately, and I want women empowerment. I want strong women in film. I think too many films, especially, well, I guess always, right? That's been taken away from them. So I like the idea of the bride standing up and having agency. Too much of this movie kind of throws in a feminist agenda that does not fit within the overall narrative of the bride just building her own character and her own sense of worth and power and all of that. I love the movie. I really, really do. I do not think that this is going to appeal to a wider audience. I think that the Frankenstein mythos, like that, actual the pathos of the character is something that we continue to resonate with. I think that the bride in this case is something that we can get behind, but there's, like I said, some shocking violence. The music is discordant. It doesn't fit with the film. There is a flashing light rave sort of sequence that goes on for 5 to 7 minutes, way too long. And overall, the movie itself is just a little bit too long. I think if some of those things had been cut back a little bit, we would have seen a much tighter, stronger film instead of trying to fit in every bit of idea that they had and just kind of kitchen sinking this whole thing. Like I said, I wanted to go 10. And then I said, you know what? I'm probably going to give it a 9. I think realistically now, it's a very, very strong 8. I almost said 7. But there's too much good in this film, and there's too much that I think, is different enough from other films, even though, like I said, there's so much that you're going to watch and you're going to be like, wait a minute, hold on, didn't they do this in this other movie? That maybe it's intentional that way. It has to be intentional that way, because there's no way you putting on the Ritz in a movie about Frankenstein and not think about another movie, right? You all know what I'm talking about. So there we are. I'm going to give this an 8. I think I am going to see it again. If you have seen it, please let me know what you think. I would love to discuss this movie. There's a lot to talk about, some of it. And the ending, like, what exactly do you think happened at the ending? Maybe. So sorry, my phone ran out of space, so I guess I am done here. Anyways, this movie is an 8. Like I said, if you've seen it, please let me know what you think. I appreciate you all. Like, share, subscribe. I will see you after the next movie.